How do you explain that Ferrari in your own home has not even managed to enter the Q3? What is happening inside Maranello that caused this unexpected collapse in front of his hobby? Emilia Romagna 2025 was much more than a simple stop on the calendar. For Ferrari, he represented the return home. Imola is not any circuit. It is a temple for Maranello's team, a scenario loaded with history, emotion and emotional meaning for both the team and the millions of tifosi that follow it with devotion. Each asphalt meter of the Enzo e Dino Ferrari breathes Ferrari's legacy, and therefore each visit there is lived as an opportunity for redemption, reaffirmation, even claiming the rest of the world. In that context, the pressure was not just high, it was absolute. Because when you compete at home, you not only take your performance to the limit, you also face the judgment of your own believers. During the practice sessions, both Leclerc and Hamilton were comedy but optimistic. There were no displays but signs of improvement. The atmosphere in the paddock was loaded with hope. The rhythm in medium batches seemed competitive, and even spoken of possible first row after the conditions were favorable. Imola's layout, with its technical curves and demanding braking areas, has always been a challenge for cars' balance, but it is also a circuit that can reward the brave and precise. Ferrari trusted that their improvements would allow them to be at the necessary level. However, that optimism, carefully cultivated on silent work days and moderate statements, hid a structural fragility that few wanted to admit. The technical reality of SF25, its extreme sensitivity to changes, its narrow operation window and chronic problems in certain key areas, began to manifest. Although the first classification simulations showed a car inside the top 10, the competition was fierce. Time differences between teams were minimal, and any error, however small, could make the difference between advancing to Q3 or being eliminated prematurely. And with that, the stage was ready. Expectation, national pressure, history, a car with promises and two pilots with clear objectives. But what was to come would not be the celebration that the tifosi expected. It would be a painful fall from the top of the illusion to the bottom of the disappointment. The classification of the Emilia Romagna 2025 prize was not a simple disappointment for Ferrari, it was an open wound in his own home. As the classification sessions advanced, the tension grew inside Maranello's garage. There was a strange energy in the environment, a mixture of nervousness and hope contained. The engineers made last-minute adjustments, the pilots refined details in their preparation laps, and the chronos began to fall. But as Q2 entered its decisive phase, something was painfully clear. Ferrari was not even close to where he needed to be. Charles Leclerc closed his best round with a time of 1:15,604. Less than a tenth, Pierre Gasly scored 1:15.505 and took the last ticket for Q3. It was a tiny margin, but devastating. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, failed to overcome that reference, being just behind his partner. The verdict was unappealable, 11th and 12th. Not a single Ferrari car among the top 10. And the most humiliating of all is that the team had prepared with surgical precision to shine in this race. All accumulated effort, all improvements brought specifically for this appointment were insufficient to overcome a minimum barrier. The emotional blow was devastating. Seeing the two deleted red cars while the names of McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes and even Alpine and Williams appeared on the screen was a difficult image to assimilate for engineers, managers and, above all, for the millions of fans who filled the stands dressed in red. This was the career in which Ferrari had to demonstrate strength. Not for the championship, not by points, but for pride. By history. For the symbolic weight of Imola. And ending outside Q3 was more than a sports failure. It was a betrayal of expectations. But the contrast that hurt was not in the upper part of the table, but further back. Carlos Sainz, the man who Ferrari had let go at the end of 2024, managed to place his Williams in the 6th position. The same Sainz that so many considered a victim of a sports injustice within the Scuderia, now appeared as an uncomfortable reminder of past decisions. While Leclerc and Hamilton dealt with a temperamental and unpredictable car, Sainz squeezed a Williams to place it ahead of the two Ferrari in classification. A powerful image that said a lot without words. The classification in Imola was not an accident, nor a simple unfortunate day. It was the reflection of a deeper problem. Ferrari was not ready, technically or strategically, to face his direct rivals under conditions of maximum pressure. And what hurts most in Maranello is not only to have failed, but to have done it where it hurt. In front of its people, in the heart of Italy, in a circuit that should have been a celebration and ended up being a public trial. The causes of the disaster lived by Ferrari in the classification of the Grand Prix of Emilia Romagna 2025 are not explained only with a bad return or a calculation error. They are the accumulated result of a series of technical deficiencies that were already dragging since the beginning of the season and that, in Imola, were exposed without anesthesia. The SF25, the car that should be the definitive evolution of the project initiated in 2023, has shown to have a tremendously unpredictable character. Its sensitivity to configuration changes has been one of the main sources of frustration within the team, and the Imola circuit, with its technical and demanding layout, amplified those weaknesses. One of the most serious problems detected by engineers has to do with the aerodynamic stability of the car in medium load conditions. Telemetry data shows that both Leclerc and Hamilton wasting time, especially in prolonged braking curves, where SF25 failed to maintain a constant line or guarantee traction at the output. Lewis Hamilton summed it up with a phrase that was as honest as alarming: "We made 2 minimum settings and the car changed completely." That phrase is not a simple complaint. It is a clear symptom that Ferrari has built a car that operates inside an extremely narrow technical window, where any modification, however small, can destabilize the entire balance of the car. In addition to the sensitivity problems, the SF25 suffers with the brakes, a critical appearance in a circuit like Imola where the intense braking areas are numerous. Hamilton mentioned that the problems with the brakes are not something new, but that they have been dragging them from the beginning of the championship. That lack of confidence at the time of braking limits the margin of aggressiveness of the pilots and, above all, affects their ability to position themselves well in the curves. In classification, where every thousandth, not having a clear braking reference can cost not only tenths, but the passage to the next round. To these factors is added a last ingredient that further complicates the panorama: the inconsistency between sessions. Ferrari has proven unable to reproduce in classification what sometimes hints into practices. This not only mines the confidence of the technical team, but it generates constant uncertainty in the pilots, who do not know how to certain how the car will behave in the decisive return. These types of situations are those that convert a competitive classification into a lottery, as Hamilton described it. And when you depend on luck in a sport as calculated as Formula One, it is a sign that something is very bad in the development of your car. The consequences of Ferrari's qualifying disaster in Imola go far beyond a bad Saturday session. The blow is not just symbolic, it is strategic. In a season where each point counts and the competition between McLaren, Red Bull and Mercedes becomes more intense, to lose the opportunity to add strong in a key race such as home represents a setback in the goal of staying in the fight for the championship. Ferrari cannot afford to give ground, and even less in a circuit where historically he has had the emotional advantage and total support of his hobby. This result calls into question the equipment to react under pressure. In addition, this poor performance sows internal doubts within the technical structure of Maranello. Are you really understanding the SF25? Is the car the problem, or is it the way they are managing their evolution? The answers are not simple, but the questions are already felt in the teams of the team. Director Frédéric Vasseur, who arrived with the promise of bringing stability and efficiency, begins to face questions about project management. Development decisions, the focus on car configuration, and even track strategies are under an increasingly demanding magnifying glass. Imola was a call of attention that no one in Ferrari can ignore. This bad result also has direct effects on the morals of the pilots. Charles Leclerc, who has always proud the weight of representing Ferrari, begins to show signs of frustration due to the lack of concrete results. His radio messages and his statements after the classification show a pilot who is losing patience. For his part, Lewis Hamilton, who arrived in Ferrari looking for a new motivation and a last glorious chapter in his career, is in a situation he did not expect. The learning and adaptation that was willing to assume is now loaded with unforeseen obstacles, which could affect its performance and leadership within the team if the situation does not improve soon. Looking to the future, the immediate panorama for Ferrari is not encouraging. The calendar does not give truce, and the next appointments have important technical challenges. Monaco, with its narrow and slow route, could mitigate some of the problems of the SF25, but not solve them. Spain and Canada, on the other hand, will test the stability in rapid curve and aerodynamic efficiency, two areas where Ferrari is clearly behind McLaren and Mercedes. If they fail to find effective solutions in the short term, the risk is not only to be left behind in the championship, but also lose the trust of their pilots and their fans. Imola cannot be repeated if Ferrari wants to aspire to more than being a secondary actor in 2025. The big question that this classification leaves is whether Ferrari has the resources and time to reverse such a compromised situation. It is not enough to have world-class pilots or promise updates every weekend. The team needs to make deep structural decisions that change the way they address the development and operation of its car. The reality of Formula One in 2025 is brutally competitive, and if Ferrari does not respond now, it runs the risk of definitively lagging behind in a season that seemed to have potential for something much bigger. Therefore, I want to know your opinion. Do you think Ferrari can still fight for the title this season, or what we saw in Imola is the reflection of a crisis that goes beyond the car? Can Lewis Hamilton lead this project towards redemption, or will it be another great figure that leaves Maranello without fulfilling his dream? Leave me your perspective in the comments. Share this analysis with other fans, and do not forget to subscribe to continue unraveling the great themes that mark the season. Here, every week, we are thoroughly with what others only mention above. Because understanding Formula One goes far beyond looking at the results.